This monster should have been locked up. This beautiful, innocent 23-year-old young woman was a Ukrainian refugee who had recently fled her country for a chance at a safer life and a promising new beginning here in the United States of America. But tragically, a public transportation system in a major American city was more dangerous than the active war zone that she left.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin with the Illinois Channel, and I'm joined once again with Jeff Berkowitz of Public Affairs TV in Chicago. And Jeff, quite a story that has been breaking across the nation with the savage murder of this young Ukrainian girl who came here to the United States to have ideally a good life, and instead she gets on a train and is stabbed by a man sitting behind her who had quite a long criminal record. And while that happened in Charlotte, North Carolina, the implications of what happened to this woman are really happening and filtering into other topics across the nation, and those happening here in Illinois, where the governor is opposing what President Trump has been doing. We're going to be talking about that. But let's start first with just another soundbite from a press conference yesterday from the White House by the White House press spokesman, talking about how what has been happening in this case with this individual who is allegedly the murderer, although it was caught on video, and how her life could have been spared if the judicial system had acted accordingly.
Brown had previously served 5 years in prison for a robbery with a deadly weapon charge, and he had also forfeited bonds 3 different times, twice in 2014 and once in 2023. Despite all of this past documented criminal history, when Brown was arrested yet again in January of this past year, a Democrat judge, who I will add was a strong supporter of former Vice President Kamala Harris, released this insane criminal once again without requiring him to pay any bail. He simply had to sign a written promise to return for his court hearing. Think about how crazy it is to ask a career criminal, someone who by definition repeatedly breaks the law, to just sign a written promise and come back again another day. This is madness.
So the topic going on around the country right now is, could her life have been saved if the justice system had kept this guy in prison? We'll talk about that. Jeff, let me get your reactions first. What's your thoughts?
Well, there's a rot going on across the country of the United States of America. And that rot is what's happened to our criminal justice system over the last 10 to 15 years. You can go back to Kim Foxx when the Cook County Board President brought her here, installed her as the state's attorney of Cook County in 2016 and reelected her in 2020, and a massive increase in crime due to Kim Foxx. And what happened here, and nobody wants to face up to it, it's a crime issue because we started doing this 10 to 15 years ago. People are crazy. There are people who are mentally incompetent. They can't live their life properly. And we don't want to lock them up. Oh no. And we don't want to put them in an institution where they can't leave and the rest of society could be safe, because that would be unfair to the person. So when they're arrested, when they have a long rap sheet, when they're in and out of prison for 5-10 years, doesn't matter. Their rights have to be protected. But this young lady who came from Ukraine because it was unsafe there, and she came to the United States, the land of opportunity and safety and fairness, and she is savagely stabbed when she goes on what would be known here as the CTA. Across the country, they now call it light rail. Light rail. What the hell is going on? Does anybody speak English? Does anybody speak English? She got on a commuter train and she was stabbed to death. And the killer, the perp, walks around the train with the blood of that young lady dripping, and nobody I think he does that for 5 minutes, because this is the world in which we live in. We live in a world in which Tim Evans, the chief judge of the Circuit Court of Cook County, hey, Jeff, nothing can be done. This guy's a little nutty. We'll give him a little treatment, and out he goes, and out he goes. So when he's arrested in January, and they should have known the guy is crazy, And then you can say, oh, it's not his
Well,
fault.
they
Yeah,
knew the guy
maybe
was
it's not.
crazy. They had his mother has come out and said that he's crazy, and she kicked him out of the house when he was released from prison. One time he goes home and beats his sister up. I mean, this guy has a long criminal record, and it's almost like when we have these school shootings, and you find out after the fact that in so many of these cases, the person had a host of mental issues going on for a long time. So, without going too far afield, the thing is, we want to eventually get to talking about some of the politics coming up in campaign 2026 next year. But this is happening right now. Not only the murder of this young girl, but look at what is happening and being pushed by the Democrats across the country. You have the senator from Delaware, I think it was, Van Heusen, if I'm forgetting his right name right now, but who goes down to try to get the Maryland dad, the senator from Maryland, get the Maryland dad right out of prison. You have Kim Foxx, as you say. You had the prosecutor Kim Gardner in St. Louis, who was released, kicked out of her job, and this soft on crime approach where, again, then you got no cash bail, where you're letting people out without any bail. You have here, passed by the Democrats and signed into law by Governor Pritzker, the so-called Safety Act, which law enforcement across Illinois is saying does not protect citizens. So, Jeff, I just think that what we are getting is a pot boiling within the American populace that is going to be quite an issue.
When I was a law school student, we used to learn the basics of criminal justice. So we investigate crime, we arrest somebody starting with, is there reasonable suspicion? Then is there probable cause? And when there's probable cause, they're arrested. They're detained if they're dangerous or if they're a flight risk, and they're detained to trial. And then they're tried, and there's a fair trial. But there has to be a prosecutor, a state's attorney who wants to prosecute violent crime, because if you have somebody like Kim Foxx, it's often not prosecuted. So the criminal justice system stops there. And then if you can get her, Kim Foxx, to prosecute when there's violent crime, then you hope you have a trial, and you hope you have a judge who's fair, not somebody appointed by somebody like, well, supported or something controlled by Tim Evans. So that judge runs a fair trial. And then when the trial's over and the jury convicts, then there's an appropriate sentence, not probation, but for somebody who's done a violent crime, they should be doing a commensurate amount of time. Probation means often they leave. There's no penalty. 2 years probation, check in with your parole officer.
Well, we heard that in the soundbite from the White House press briefing yesterday. That here this guy who had all kinds of a criminal record was saying he should sign this form that says, I promise to come back, Scout's honor. I mean, this is ridiculous.
You should get away with that when you're in Charlotte and you have a liberal city council and you have a liberal judge. There's nothing wrong being liberal, but liberal should not mean that these people, that the person does not believe that when there's a conviction and the person has a long record and they're now arrested again, take a good look before they're released. Maybe, and if they're insane, yes, maybe they are insane. Well, they just don't go out because it would be unfair. Maybe you don't put that person in jail, but you put them in an institution where they're not allowed to leave. And if they do leave, notice is given, so the person is brought back and placed in an institution until they're viewed as sane. So this combination of not treating people well who are mentally ill, it doesn't mean you just take them in and you try to cure them while you're trying to fix them, so to speak. You detain them, you put them in an institution where they're not allowed to leave. This gentleman, if you want to call him that, shouldn't have been allowed to leave. And when eventually he reoffended, and eventually this Irina from Jeruska, thank you, from Ukraine, is slaughtered. And that word should be used, but it's not. It wasn't even reported until the conservatives found out about this, and they started pushing on the media because it shouldn't be reported, because the mayors were saying we don't want this on camera. We don't want the video out there. They want to hide it. and they talk about Trump violating the law.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point you bring up.
Right there.
It was the White House press briefing that was forcing the networks to carry this story because so many of them were ignoring it. They weren't putting it on, putting this video on. Now, nobody should show the actual stabbing of this poor young girl. But the point is, if you see the beginning of the video where the man, Mr. Brown, stands up behind her and raises his arm before he starts stabbing her, and they cut the video there, which I would think at this point most Americans have seen. But it's shameful that the networks would not be covering that. But that's an aside. What do you think are the political implications for the elections? I mean, here the Democrats overwhelmingly have control, but we have, as everyone well knows, the governor and the mayor of Chicago denying help from President Trump to bring in help from the feds to help with crime fighting, as he did successfully in Washington, D.C. And what do you think are going to be the political ramifications when the voters see this? Even though it happened in Charlotte, North Carolina, I think the voters in Chicago and elsewhere around the state would be going, there, but for the grace of God, go I. It could happen to any of us.
Barry, up until now, up until September 10, we have not had somebody speaking out forcefully for the Republican Party for a thoughtful and appropriate and justifiable approach to take to our key core issues in the state of Illinois, one of which is crime. We've got 4 or 5 more, but crime is a major problem. And the governor, J.B. Pritzker, should not be allowed to get away with the statement, crime is declining, so we don't have a problem in Illinois with crime. And we don't have a problem in Chicago with crime. Just because it's declining? No, it's bad. It's unsafe, J.B. Pritzker. It's unsafe in the south side of Chicago. It's unsafe in the west side of Chicago. It's now become unsafe in the north side. Not where you live, JB, and your little neck of the woods where you've got armed guards basically protecting you on the north side of Chicago. Not so unsafe. But many people feel unprotected, so they want to have concealed carry so they can protect themselves.
Yeah, that's another thing. Try to get a concealed carry license in Illinois.
But my point is, thank very much, we're having a change. This week, we'll have a new candidate. I've been predicting this for a while, but this time I'm fairly sure, announced for governor, or announced he is running in the Republican primary, and that'll be Ted Dabrowski. And we've been talking about Ted for quite a bit. Ted is the short version of Ted Dabrowski.
Leave me, if I might, just so people, this is Ted Dabrowski, who has been the president of WirePoints, and you and I, especially when you do these shows here, use the research that they produce. And those who watch our show will be familiar with that because we often have slides up showing how the schools are failing and other people are leaving the state, and that data is done by WirePoints. So Ted is not the only candidate run for governor. We expect him to announce, as you just said, but he's obviously on top of a lot of these issues. I just wanted to let people see what he looks like.
Well, yeah, let's do a short sketch on each of these candidates. And we'll start with Ted because he will be announcing this week that he is running for governor in the Illinois GOP primary. And the short of Ted, the last 15 years, he's been looking at major issues that Illinois has had that have not been addressed, and they've gotten increasingly worse. And we started with crime right now because we're talking about it. He's been looking at that, looking at the issues I've mentioned, the lack of prosecution where appropriate, the lack of judges who see that cases are tried properly, and if the jury or the judge convicts, then there'll be an appropriate sentence. Then
let's not drag it out too long. Let's go. We got our.
Well, the point is, we will try to fix the criminal justice system, which will prevent the kinds of crimes that we talked about to open the show. He will try to do something.
Before we do all that, I think we're putting. What are the implications in Chicago? I mean, that's why we do this, because you're in Chicago, so you have a feel. What are the implications if the murders that happen on the south and west side of Chicago in predominantly black neighborhoods were happening on the North Shore, what would be happening politically within the Democratic Party if it were happening up there instead of on the south side?
Well, they would be in Mayor Brandon Johnson's office, even though he's only mayor of the city of Chicago. He is responsible for a great deal of crime, even though he says it's getting better, not getting better fast enough. Most people, Mr. Johnson, Mayor Johnson, don't have the armed guards protecting them who now protect you in Austin, where it's not safe to walk around unless you have a lot of armed guards, as you have, because you're mayor. And they would be at J.B. Pritzker's office, or home, wherever he operates out of here in Chicago or Springfield, and they would say, okay, you don't control street crime, but you have a bully pulpit, number one. You can speak out what's happening and make sure that we have a better policy to apprehend criminals and keep them in jail.
And keep them in jail. And what about Tom Dart running the Cook County jail
Hold
system?
on, before we get to Tom Dart, J.B. Pritzker, you can go to your Illinois legislature, which has been bought and paid for by you. So you spread your money to those legislators, and they got you elected in 2014, in 2018, and then they got you reelected in 2022. That's your legislature, bought and paid for by you. And so when they have the wrong policies, when they have the Safety Act sail through, that's you, J.B. Pritzker. And I think, getting back to the candidates, I think James Mendrick will be saying that. He's the sheriff running in the LA GOP
Let me
primary.
again very quickly here pop Mr. Mendrick up. Is the sheriff of DuPage County, and as we've been talking about this crime, then it obviously gives Mendrick perhaps at least from his legal background, law enforcement background, I should say, the opportunity to maybe score some points. But, you know, Jeff, when I've seen people on the street interviewed from the south side of Chicago and the west side of Chicago and talking about what do you think about the president, so many of them, the vast majority of these people who happen to be obviously black in those neighborhoods are saying, yes, Mr. President, come to Illinois, or come to Chicago, bring us, make us safe. And I wonder, we've seen Trump get, now Trump's not going to be on the ballot again, but we saw Trump increase voting for the Republican for him, but from black communities, from the Hispanic communities in the past election. I wonder to what extent this will also weaken the Democratic base in those minority communities where they want law enforcement in their communities. And here you have the governor and Brendan Johnson saying, no, Trump's just doing this and creating a crisis where it doesn't exist.
Well, I would hope the candidates, and I think certainly some of these candidates for governor, will be going out to the south side and going out to the west side.
On the Republican
of Chicago,
ticket, you mean?
On the Republican ticket, because I know Ted Dabrowski, and I know he studied this crime, and I know the issues I've been focusing on in this show and saying are issues that come to me from Ted Dabrowski. And we'll find out if they come to us from James Mendrick, the sheriff of DuPage County. We'll find out because next week, I believe Darren Bailey will be announcing his second run for governor, and we'll find out from Darren what he's going to do differently in that run, because people are going to want to know, if they vote for him in the Republican primary, what's different, because he lost by 13 points last time. And what is he going to do to go to the south side and the west side to focus on the crime issue?
You also have Aaron Del Mar, who will be a candidate.
And Aaron Del Mar would most likely be his running mate. And so what is Aaron Del Mar going to do? Because he says
isn't Aaron Del Mar running for governor?
No, you haven't heard the latest. The latest, Terry, is that over the course of this week, it's become clear that Aaron Del Mar is now running on a ticket, or will be running on a ticket officially next week, with Darren Bailey, who's running for governor, and Aaron Del Mar will be running for lieutenant governor. And we'll find out in the next day or two who will be running with Ted Dabrowski for governor, lieutenant governor. And we already know who's running with Mendrick, who's running his candidate. So, and I guess we'll find out from Max Solomon, the other candidate.
So again, what your thoughts are? What's the political implications?
Terry, can I just finish the sentence, please? And then you can go.
Well, but we're running out short of time here.
I know, but the fourth candidate who already is running is Max Solomon. Max doesn't have much money, doesn't have
I
much
got
of a
to
chance.
say, I mean,
He
Max might
deserves
be
a mention.
articulate, but he's not going to be.
He's not going
He's
to
not
be.
going to go
Well,
very far. He doesn't have the
I don't think.
resources of the
I don't
support.
know that James Mendrick has the resources. He had 60,000 in his kitty, I think, at the beginning of the
Well, at
year.
least he's
I
an
think he's got
elected
60 or
official in one
70,000.
of the largest counties in the state of Illinois, up by Chicagoland, so people know his name. But what
But
are the
just to mention,
implications for the minority communities, for the president to be tough on crime, and the Democrats in Chicagoland are not?
well, yeah, well, number one, the Democrats will be facing some pressure from all of these candidates to talk about crime and, importantly, their solutions. Because Ted and Mendrick and Darren Bailey and Max Solomon will all be talking, hopefully, about their solutions. So, Pritzker? What have you done in
Well,
7 years to
hang
make
on,
things
you're
better?
still avoiding my question. Do you maybe you don't have a feel for it? Do you have any feel for if the Democrats are losing support within the black community because of the amount of crime and their refusal of the president's help to cut down on the crime in their areas? Because as we said,
Yes,
it's not
damn
happening
straight.
in
Very,
Evanston.
I'm sorry I didn't say it because it's so effing obvious. Damn straight they're losing support from blacks because they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And this crime, if it's coming down, it's still not safe. It's not safe for them to go on the red line. Hell, it's not safe for me to go on the red line anywhere, which used to be safe, or the purple line, or the pink line, or the orange line. Not any of the lines. And it's not safe to drive in your car on the freeway because you may get caught between gang members shooting at each other and you're shot innocently, or your kids are shot, as happened, or your brother is shot, as happened to Januli Caldwell, okay, who's a Fox News correspondent who was thinking of running and may still run in the
Gianno
Republican
Caldwell,
primary for the
right,
U.S.
whose brother
Senate.
was shot.
Gianno
And I
Caldwell,
wanted to
sorry,
get a
mispronounced
video
that.
bite because he was saying what I was saying on other publication. And he's saying, when you lose a family member, it's of little comfort to have someone else saying, oh, but crime is marginally down. Uh, Chicago still has over 500 murders a year on it.
Well, and just a few years ago, it had 800 murders in 2022 and 2023. And I don't see any Democrats talking about it. It's like they fixed the problem. They didn't fix anything, okay? And that could come back just as easily as it was. But before we do the whole show on crime, I just want to mention blacks are also sick and tired in Chicago, and not just blacks. Blacks and Hispanics and whites are sick and tired of having schools that don't perform. If you go around the state of Illinois, this is not a racial problem. This is a public school problem. At best, 40% of the kids read at grade level around the state of Illinois, whether they go to Decatur, whether they go to Quincy or Chicago, your neck of the woods. If they're not performing, and they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they're sick and tired of paying the highest property taxes in the country, and they're sick
Yeah.
and tired of paying one of the highest overall taxes in the country.
You know,
And they're
the,
sick and tired. Terry, let me just finish in 45 seconds. They're sick and tired of having job growth of 15,000 jobs, new jobs in Illinois, under Pritzker's 7-year record, when states like Texas and Florida and other states that really welcome people to come and be industrious have 1 million jobs created in the same time that Pritzker says, oh, we're doing great, 15,000 jobs. They're sick and tired. They're sick and tired of
Jeff, you got
illegal
to watch for a
immigration.
second. You're bouncing your camera all over the place, so
Okay.
you're
They're
going to
sick and
stop it.
tired of Jeff bouncing the camera. No, they're sick and tired of having illegal immigration become another
So,
major
so with
source of
that sick
crime.
and tired on crime, on failing education, we are going to have potentially more black voters moving towards the Republican ticket. And there's one, you may know her name. She has a black woman in Chicago who's been on media nationally, and she's running a Flip Chicago Red. Now, I'm not expecting that to happen anytime soon, but it makes the point, if a black woman is talking about that these issues are increasingly there for the Republicans in Illinois to make hay with, and they're not fabricated. It's obvious as a young woman being murdered on a train in Charlotte, North Carolina, people want to be safe in their neighborhoods, and they are not in Chicago.
And you know what Pritzker calls people who raise the issues we're discussing? He calls them carny barkers. That's what we get from a governor of the state of Illinois. Differ with him, he calls you carny barker, and God knows what else he's going to do when somebody raises those issues. And what's he going to do to the governor candidates in the Republican Party who raise it? That is well, I'm trying to look for the right word for a governor of a state to prevent legitimate, thoughtful debate on the issues by calling somebody who studies the issue and tries to raise it a carny barker.
Well, I just wonder
That's what we
who
get
he's
from GP.
listening to, or if it's his own bad political instincts, because, Governor, you're on the wrong side of this issue. You could have been working in a bipartisan way with the president and say, of course I want to bring safety and I welcome aid from the federal government. I want to bring safety to the citizens. But that's not what he's doing. And I think it's going to be a threat to the Democrats. And I wonder just how long are all these state representatives and state senators going to stay loyal to the governor when you have an issue that becomes so heated as I think this issue
Terry,
is.
just look at D.C., Washington, D.C.
And by the way, let me just quickly insert. Let's remember that Ken Griffin, the wealthiest man in the state of Illinois, left Chicago and took high-paying jobs with them because the governor and the mayor were doing nothing to cut down on crime. And that happened, what, a year, maybe 2 years ago, that he left the state and went to Florida.
That man who left, Ken Griffin, he left a year or two ago. His company is still here. He still has a stake here, but yeah, he's more based in Florida. But he had been here 30 years. One wonders whether he wants to come back and make a little bit of an investment and maybe support one or more of these candidates who's running for governor of the state of Illinois. And so if we look around outside of Illinois, we'll see what happened in Washington. The mayor there, who's also quite progressive and liberal,
Right.
She decided to cooperate. A little different constitutional and legal environment, but nevertheless, she cooperated with Trump, and there have been very good results there. The mayor of Boston's she's not cooperating, and we'll see there are not going to be very good results. And so if Pritzker were listening to the show and said, maybe I should show a willingness to cooperate. Maybe we have some criminal aliens here who should be apprehended by ICE, and maybe our police, instead of battling them, should help them find, identify, and remove these people.
Mayor Bowser, I want to get in before we leave. Mayor Bowser of D.C. was the one painting on the street in D.C., Black Lives Matter. And then just the other day, she said she wanted to thank the president because they went a whole week without one person being killed. And undoubtedly, all the citizens of D.C., we've heard them talk on the Man on the Street interviews, feel safer. Jeff, we're almost out of time. We got about a minute and a half. One thing I want to, as we tape this, tomorrow is the 24th anniversary of 9/11. We think about those who were killed on that day, speaking of crime. And it goes to show, again, that the amount of threats to America can be sitting on a train in Charlotte, North Carolina, or being in a office tower in New York City. The American people want to have a strong president who guards us, who protects American lives, no matter what the threat is. And I think this is
as we tape this, as you know, a drone was flying over Poland from Russia toward Ukraine, and it was shot down. And now the senior people in NATO are meeting as to what to do about this. Should Article 5 be invoked? That is, is this an attack on Poland? And does that mean every member will defend every inch of countries in NATO? That's being decided as we talk. So national security was an issue in 2001 and 9/11, and it's even more of an issue today as we tape this on September 10, 2025.
It's been a little bit of time since we were last together, and that's because you did an interview with Don Tracy, who's running for the Senate. People can go on your website. They can go on my website. We have that interview. But for now, we're going to have to close it out. So, Jeff, have a great week. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. As always, leave us your comments, and Jeff and I will see you again next time.
See you soon.